First of all, good evening, everyone. I hope you're all safe and well out there. My name's Stuart. I'm the CEO of the AAAA. I'll kick off first by providing a bit of an update on some market intelligence we've done on the impact of COVID out there. This survey was building on the initial COVID survey that we did in May, and the period of time really runs over the whole of the month of June. It's important to note that, the month of July. It's important to note that stage 4 restrictions weren't introduced into metropolitan Melbourne until the end of July. So essentially what this covers is Melbourne in stage 3 and regional Victoria with no restrictions. So I guess the highlights of the survey are that the good news is that our industry is open. The majority of workshops are recovering. The business that they lost during the lockdowns. But there are a couple of alarming trends. I think first of all, what we're seeing, and we'll show you a slide shortly, that businesses are having to do more with less. So whilst most businesses outside of Victoria are getting back to normal operating hours, a lot of them are doing that with less staff. So they're having to do more with less. And Victoria is really a significant concern. The ongoing impact of the pandemic is clearly visible, and you'll see in the results it's really night and day in terms of Victoria and the rest of Australia. And most operators are expecting it to get worse before it gets better. And we are seeing very large variations between different states. In fact, if you're living here in Victoria with us, and particularly in Melbourne, you feel like you're in a different country when you're seeing Facebook feeds from the rest of Australia. It really is. It really hits home how difficult conditions are here in Victoria. And what we're seeing, there's probably, I guess, 3 tranches of states. You're seeing Western Australia, South Australia, Northern Territory, and Tasmania to a lesser extent, really returning to parity. And in some cases, some workshops are actually busier than they were pre-pandemic. Queensland and New South Wales are still recovering, or elements of the industry are still recovering, although Queensland has gone through fairly well. But what we're seeing in Victoria is that the Victorian operators are seeing significant declines in business with worse to come. And I think overall, what we're seeing is Australia-wide, about 15% of workshops are under significant revenue stress. If you compared that to most small business sectors, that would be faring pretty well. But the problem is that in Victoria, that figure is over 40%, which is huge. And we believe that metropolitan Melbourne businesses, workshops, will need a significant level of support to help rebuild their businesses on the back of this. We know that the independent workshop sector is predominantly small family-owned businesses. They don't have huge cash reserves, and we are going to need support to get behind them. This next slide shows you the impact by region, and the question is, where do you see things from a revenue perspective in the next 4 weeks? And what it does is it compares the results between our survey in May and then again in July. I think the first thing to note here is that there's much more certainty, whether it's good or bad, over revenues. You see there's a lot more uncertainty early on. That we would expect that. We were living the experience for the first time, whereas I think people are now more certain. But also what we're seeing is really that three phase. WASA, Northern Territory, almost back to normal. Only 20% of businesses expecting slightly worse, so 80% much better. But with Queensland and New South Wales, you're seeing a cohort, 15 to 20% of businesses that are either slightly worse or significantly worse, or don't know. But the big outlier there is in Victoria. You can see over half the businesses are expecting a downturn in revenue over the next 4 weeks, and that, as I said, is going into stage 4 lockdown. Also talked before about number of employees, and this next slide goes to that. I think this is hopefully this trend is a temporary one. What you don't see there is the variation between the states. It's pretty consistent across all states, but essentially a third of businesses have less staff now than they had before COVID-19. And when you compare that to turnover figures, where a lot of them are back to normal, what we're seeing is businesses are operating with less staff, but in some cases doing the same or more work. We'd like to hope that employment levels do bounce back over time, but that's something we do need to watch. I guess the other thing to say, and this is not surprising, our sector is by its nature very resilient and very optimistic, and even considering all the things that are going on, particularly in metropolitan Melbourne, overall there is still a high degree of optimism. And also what we've seen, and this is about the resilience of our sector, is we've seen massive changes to business processes right across the sector, and they're very widespread. Sanitising of vehicles is basically 93% of workshops doing that. So virtually every workshop in Australia has now adopted that practice. Contactless pickup and drop-offs, 80%. Interestingly, that in the areas that the states that are doing the best, seeing the highest number of, I guess, altruistic activities like supporting essential workers with complementary services, 60% in WA and SA. Interesting trend around express services, so that shorter safety service, 33% of businesses nationally are offering those. Interesting to see whether that's just a short-term thing to I guess, appease customers' concerns about minimising contact, but also I think it's being driven a little bit by the situation in Victoria at the moment, where you can only do emergency repairs and service. You can't do scheduled servicing. But yeah, quite a pivot in the services offered. And the final slide here is how workshops have I guess pivoted to market themselves. And what we are seeing is much more proactivity in the way that workshops reach out to their customers. And for instance, this slide here shows the level of SMS messaging to inform customers that you're open and that you're available to do their scheduled servicing or emergency repairs, depending on where you are. And we see a big jump nationwide from 58% of workshops doing it in May to 77%. But what we will see is on the back of this is a need for the industry and for the larger groups to do more in terms of public education, to restore public faith in getting their car serviced, to make sure that that all of those changes in processes in safety systems and whatever are being communicated out to customers so they feel comfortable coming into our workshops. And we as the AAAA are looking at campaigns around promoting the merits of independent repairers and service, because we think that our industry, once restrictions are lifted right across Australia, will bounce back very quickly.